like coming face to face with death, it was like, oh, right, okay, if I don't do it now, if I don't live the life I really want to live now, maybe never. I had to accept I don't know the answer. I don't get it. It's not like going through cancer was just hell. It was a beautiful healing.
Welcome everyone to the Mind Over Matter podcast. A very interesting guest today, Rose Long, an interesting person I've met from my days working in a recovery social enterprise, when I encountered lots of people who had a really interesting story when it came to personal transformation and overcoming difficulty and getting to a point of their lives where they can offer something to other people who are also on that journey. So Rose Long has got a fantastic story. As far as I see it, she probably wouldn't say or think that. And I'm sure we're going to get loads out of it from today for today's podcast. Rose is now a holistic life coach, incorporates aspects of meditation and yoga, and lots of other learnings along the way, I'm sure, to help people on their path. That's what she does now. It's as simple as that. She helps people. That's what this podcast is about. How people do that and how people have got to that place. So we're going to uncover that in today's podcast. But a lot has happened in the space of the last time that I spoke to Rose in the first podcast and this. So I thought I'd catch up with Rose and see where she is and how things are going generally this year. So Rose, how's it going at the moment?
I'm just chuckling to myself because my husband has a real thing about do-gooders. So I'm just imagining him listening to your introduction going, oh, bloody do-gooder. I'm not listening to her.
That's what you would come across as, like.
I'm chuckling. Yeah. Helps people. Oh, God. Give me a break.
He sees the other side.
So, Well, also, I don't think I help people. I think I just offer a space for people who want to help themselves. I know that's a bit pedantic, but it's not like I've got anything sussed. I've learned some fantastic things through recovery, through working with great teachers and, traditions, and there are amazing tools. There are amazing tools available to us that make life a lot more easy to manage.
Yeah, I mean, I think for you and for other people similar, there is an unease there with accepting a label or a somebody putting you in that light that or you help people, and that just shows off your authenticity as well. I think, because I think if anyone accepts them labels too readily, there's something quite amiss there. But that's also quite nice to hear that you don't, even though I've put you in that light for the purposes of a podcast and people listening, you don't see yourself.
Well, that may be. I mean, I think it's also because I know there's part of me that would readily suck that up. And it wouldn't do me or anyone else any good. I have a propensity to be pompous and self-important, all that. I can go to any of those places, so I have to watch it. I have to watch that I don't think that I'm any different from anyone else. And that's the great thing about being in recovery from addiction is if ever I forget, I just have to remember what an absolute broken wreck I've been. It's like, oh, yeah.
Well, this is what's good. People, say like this podcast, for example, it's like, oh, there's some nice people who tell you great things and learn how to live life and, they can help you and stuff like that. But what I really want to get over to people through these interviews is the human aspect of people. So, okay, I'm elevating the status of some people like yourself and some others, but we're human beings.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned recovery from addiction there, and I watched the program the other night. It was actually the story of Bill Wilson, the founder of AA.
I heard that was on. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was yet again a confirmation, and it's kind of nice to see it when it came towards the end of the program. You could see the kind of difficulties that he had. He'd spent 10 or so years being the manager of AA. He didn't really want that.
Right.
But people elevated him to that status. For a long, long time, he just wanted to hand it all over to the members and just be a member like everybody else.
Yeah.
So I think, he suffered because of that. And then when he put a foot wrong, which inevitably he would and did, people were like, you're not the person I thought you were.
Yeah.
So they put him on this pedestal and he's like, look, I'm not more than you.
Yeah.
I've recovered from something. This is what's happened since. I'm still a human. I'm still very fallible.
Yeah.
So, and that's the founder of AA who was getting criticised for his behaviour, and it was refreshing to see once again that even in the people we hold in the highest of esteem, there's real human fallibility there, right until the end as well. Right until the end, he ended up with another woman for a short while. I don't know if he split up from his wife and whatever. That woman helped him through depression and whatever it was. But yeah, we're humans, and there's fallibility there, and it's not that people reach these levels of perfection and where we can idealize them and we've got to get there and they're doing it right and blah blah. As you say, with yourself, you're holding a space for people through from your own experiences and bringing things into the picture, so people might be able to explore that themselves.
Yeah.
I did want to touch back on an experience that you had most recently, which has kind of powered you through the last year or so, which is, as I say, I was alluding to, your latest development, shall we say, in your recovery transformation. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, when lockdown happened, when all of that kind of kicked off, I had one-to-one clients so I could keep working with on Zoom. But I stopped doing a lot of what I do day to day, sort of work-wise, because I didn't feel able to hold space in this completely new kind of reality that I was experiencing. We were all experiencing. So I was working with people I was already comfortable with. So, and that pause gave me the opportunity to take a step back, and because there was so much going on, there was so little going on, but so much going on. I found myself, asking myself how I can make sense of this. What, in terms of the world stopping, aeroplanes stopping and consumerism. Actually, I think everybody carried on Amazon, probably, didn't they? But shops were closed, and
secret consumerism rather than that we could see.
Yeah. And there not being planes in the sky. I'm looking out the window as I say that. That's why I'm looking over there. And this sense of experiencing life here in urban suburbia differently. There wasn't the sound of the docks coming up, which sometimes we get. There wasn't the sound of planes going overhead. There wasn't the sound of cars. And it really I was really moved by it. It really spoke to a part of me that longs for that longs for the earth to be the primary. In my belief, it is the primary force, but for the world, and then the human-made world, the noise of the world, not to dominate. And obviously, there's places I could live where that would be much more of a real experience. So I was wanting to make sense of what was going on, and the only place I really felt like anything was making sense was the earth, like coming back to nature, seeing what was happening with the, regeneration of air quality, with animals suddenly, exploring and roaming around in places that had been too busy for them to previously go. And there was the only people I really heard who seemed to be speaking in a way that I found helpful was this collective of leaders from Indigenous communities around the world who met online, and those discussions, they weren't just discussions, they were also, prayers and rituals and reflections, and, they individuals brought in songs and different aspects of their culture, the richness of their culture, and it, through what they shared, I had this sense of what my deepest longing is. I don't know if it's my deepest longing, but it was this year, which was and is to live in harmony with the earth. And that for that not just to be a transitory thing, that I experience when I walk and am feeling in tune with my surroundings, and
trips to the forest and stuff.
Moved by the beauty. Did I take trips?
No, I'm saying like that's like
yeah.
How we usually get it, isn't it? Or a little day or two here, there, little walk in nature, and then it's sorted. But you're talking about on a much deeper level.
Yeah, I wanted to really give myself the opportunity, I guess, to see if that might be possible. I mean, I've experienced a profound aliveness with the earth, if that sounds a bit of a weird thing to say, but I went on a 2-month hike early on in recovery. Rob and I walked through the country and then into Scotland and across Scotland, and carried a tent and camped every night. And it was really tough at times. It was really, really, really impossibly hard. But where the
elements
ended up, the elements, exactly, and me, I'm walking through this beautiful, beautiful place, and I'm driving myself mad with, I just want a coffee. When are we gonna get somewhere where I can have a coffee? Or because I'd have emotions going on and I'd have stuff going on, and I was still so used to medicating myself. I didn't know that. Because I lived in London, so I was still just reaching for stuff to medicate all those things that I didn't want to feel or think, or in the middle of nowhere, medication stopped very abruptly, and what we were eating was what we could carry, and it was it was.
So was it like a purging then? A purging of everything?
It was. I thought of it as like shedding skins. It felt like shedding skins of comfort and convenience. All those attachments that I had to living in a way that kind of softened the edges of who I am. So I didn't really have to experience myself. I didn't really have to experience the emotions. I didn't really have to see aspects of myself I didn't want to see. So yeah, it was a purging. And then the point kind of came. I don't know when it came, but I became aware of maybe about a month in, where I was no longer in my head, just in the senses in my head. The whole of my body had become this sensory organism. So I was sensing what was around me with all of me. Yeah, I was alive. I felt so alive, and I felt so much a part of what was going on. And when it was really interesting seeing, we'd arrive in places, and because we arrived by foot, it's so different arriving in a place having never been there before by foot, because I already belong, because I've walked the landscape. I'm already connected to the earth. And so when I get there, there's no sort of sense of, oh God, where, I'm here. Where if I drive somewhere, park up, get out, I have to orientate myself. And I'm certainly an outsider. I've just driven in. I don't know anything about the place.
Yeah.
But when I've walked there and seen it off in the distance, and people responded to us so differently, people just, yeah, it was just like we belonged. I didn't bring with me any of my fears of sort of city fears of, is it safe for me to be here? Am I going to be rejected? How, whose turf is this? That sort of, were you going to say
what
something?
did that look like when you say people, it might be hard to explain, I imagine, but when you say people responded to you differently?
Well, we would just be greeted. People would just smile, or they'd talk to us, but it just...
Yeah.
And I'm not saying people in those places wouldn't have been friendly otherwise, but, I'm sure it was more to do with the fact that I've never arrived in a place with that.
Yeah. Is it like less complicated, less of all the human chatter going on?
And quite, somebody would say hello and stop, and a conversation, we wouldn't immediately talk. We'd just sort of stand there and take each other in.
Yeah.
There was no rush for anything. You're in a completely different pace of life. You're with the rhythm of the earth.
Yeah.
And, something that happened over those 2 months, which still amazes me, is that everything we need crossed our path. And once we were in the rhythm of the earth. So it was like we tapped into something, and to the point where, we'd meet someone and we wouldn't ask them the question that needed answering, and they'd answer it for us. It was, I know it sounds absurd, but it was remarkable. One day I was said to Rob, I wish I bought binoculars, because there were all these incredible birds. And I'd never thought about looking at birds through binoculars, sort of thing that my grandmother did. And, I just never thought of it as something I'd do. But seeing them, I just wanted to see them closer, to really take them in. Mm. And the next day, we were in the middle of nowhere, and I walked over over a wall, and there was a pack of binoculars. And they looked around, no houses, no, nothing in sight. And that became the norm, that in that you just didn't have, there was nothing to worry about. There was, I might be afraid from time to time, especially walking through fields with randy bullocks in, but other than that, there was nothing I needed to figure out to make things work. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't need a plan. I didn't need to control anything. In fact, quite the opposite. All I needed to do was just manage myself, manage my thinking so I could be present and enjoy where I was, take it in or not enjoy it. Sometimes I really didn't enjoy it. I'd be, walking up a hillside with rain driving into my face, shouting obscenities at the top of my voice, wondering what the hell I was doing there.
It's such a, it's like the epitome of people get glimmers and hints of reaching that place through reading someone's works, listening to people and sort of trying to get to that place where they're in flow and things are natural, and maybe it kind of comes along now and again. But the way you're describing it, and you said, you said, oh, it sounds absurd, but to me, it just sounds so real. It's like that's more what reality is. That sounds more real than anything else. Like it makes so much sense as to way that's how you would be operating in the world when things are the complications are removed. The complications of the human mind, I should say, as well as anything external. And as I say, like this podcast and the content I hope to be bringing to people has these kind of themes. It's embodiment is a big word that's to do with it. And previous guest I've had on, my first guest, Phil Shepherd, which I encourage people to look out for or to look into, definitely. Again, I'd come across embodiment and the mind-body thing and yoga and meditation and all this kind of stuff, but the thing that really kind of embodies embodiment, if you like, is a situation like you've just explained, and Phil's one that he explained, which was when he was 18, he had an experience cycling from Britain to Japan, and not knowing where he's going to stay along the way, and almost describing like the way you did. So that's what corroborates it for me. That's what gives credence to these experiences when people like yourself, it's a completely different experience, you or he or anyone else might be having, but the same features are coming out in the story, the being provided for without having a plan, without really knowing where you're going, where you're going to sleep, where the food's coming from, what's happening, and this purging going on, and so it all kind of adds weight for me to the whole, what people are getting snippets of through exploring embodiment themes and practices and people. It's like that seems to be the zenith of the experience, what you're describing. So many of the terms which have become cliches, the coming back to nature, being in harmony with the earth and all that, it just, for me anyway, it just sounds so real. It just sounds so real, and the words, almost the terms, kind of almost, I bet you could probably agree, they don't do the experience justice.
They don't, but also I think when you say live in harmony with the earth, harmony sounds really blissful, doesn't it? It's like, like listening to some beautifully harmonious music.
Yeah.
And my experience, extremely, extremely limited experience of being in harmony with the earth, is it requires suffering. It's tough. It's not what I'm programmed to do. It's not what I'm conditioned for, having grown up in the world. I'm a Londoner, and how I grew up in the middle of London, and the education I received, you know, everything was about surviving in the world, the human-made world.
Yeah.
And everything I picked up to aid that survival was also kind of the world. And coming back to the earth, not only do I have to face all that, you know, the letting go of all of that, but I also have to face the fact that, you know, it's bloody uncomfortable sitting in certain places without an armchair, you know. And there are times when I'm so uncomfortable in my own skin, even gazing at the most beautiful sky at night. It doesn't do it for me. Do you know what I mean? Where if I could distract myself with watching something on TV or social media, or, you know, I'd be distracted. I wouldn't have to feel it. So there's nowhere to hide. I guess that's what I'd say. There's nowhere to hide, and it's hard fucking work, you know. And we're used to be able to, if we've got something, we're used to being able to exchange that for an experience. You know, like, if I've got the money, I'll go on holiday, I'll do this. And often during that hike, I'd think, I could be lying on a beach somewhere. You know, I must be mad. And, you know, I had shin splints for the first 2 weeks. Every step was painful. And, you know, there were all kinds of things. You know, it's not just sort of wafting through meadows, being in love with the earth and feeling fully alive. You know, it's like, it's real. And that's why I like working with the earth, because for me, I need to keep it real. Like, if I think I'm on the path to enlightenment and the time is going to come when I just experience love for myself and everyone and everything, I get into dangerous water. You know, like that screws with my head, first of all. But also I sort of think, like, if that's going to happen, my belief is that's going to happen. It's not going to be my doing. Because I have no idea what that state is. I might have touched it, you know, certainly I've touched lots of different kinds of states through meditation, but also through hallucinogenics and, you know, different forms of drugs. And so I know lots, I don't want to say lots, but I know different kinds of states that are possible that I can tap into. And some of them are bliss, you know, some of them are absolute bliss. And if I could stay there, I would. But personally, I don't believe that's within my power. But that doesn't stop me from wanting to keep exploring what the hell is life about. Why am I here? What's going on?
Yeah.
And how can I keep really living a full life? But to me, really living a full life is about acknowledging all of it. You know, the shit, you know, the dirt, the despair, the depression. That rather than trying to, you know, I've for a long time I've wanted to try and leave that behind and just get the good stuff. You know, and a lot of my early spiritual questing, you know, I studied comparative religion at university. That was like wanting answers, wanting to know the direction I could go in. That would just mean, right, okay, sorted, I got this, you know. And yeah, so I don't know where I started with all of that, but
no, that's it's really interesting. It's really interesting to hear, and I like the willingness to be wanting to push this theme of reality rather than, you know, hedonism, basically, and escapism, which is, that's the temptation
Yeah.
Especially when you suffer, when people are having a hard time, you know, they just want to feel better without that there.
Yeah.
You know, and if you multiply that by all the people who are having a hard time, and you've got a culture basically who that wants to, so that's why, you know, we have all these hedonistic pursuits and
but I also think spirituality can be one of those.
Exactly.
And I think, you know, there's groups and collections and movements that I've, you know, touched or been a part of for a time, where there's this sense of sort of, we've got this sorted. You know, we're just a little bit more elevated than everybody else.
Yeah.
And the problem really is out there with them. It couldn't be here with us, because we're doing all this wonderful work. And I just think, I feel really uncomfortable with that. I mean, I used to be attracted to it because I wanted to believe that that's who I was. But I just think, if this is going to work, it's going to work through me seeing I'm just like everybody else. You know, there's nothing different. And anybody could have the experiences I've had, and anybody could do the practices I do, and anybody could experience the transformations that I've experienced in my life. Anybody. There's nothing special here.
Yeah.
And I just fear for the sort of divisive potential of spiritual movements, really.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And, you know, there's programs of recovery, if you like, that deal with that aspect, as in the hacking away at the parts of the ego that might make you think that you're somehow above or more than others for some kind of knowledge or insight that you might have, you know, and they're the good ones for me, the ones that encourage you to keep stepping down from that place, you know, keep putting you on the ground, keep putting you in reality, keep reminding you of your own the negative aspects of yourself, which you know, we all have and we've all got to work through. But something you mentioned before, which made me think about the notion of, when someone asks you, say, for example, oh, how are you doing? And the conversation, it seems to be guided some way. Like, I've had this off some people lately, family members. So how are you doing now? Because, you know, my situation has changed a lot this year. And I'm kind of on what could look like on the outside in a bit of a mess, you know, with like jobs and money and home and living and security and all stuff like that. So people say, how are you doing? And the conversation seems to be edging towards trying to convince them that either you're not doing okay because of your situation, or your situation has improved and therefore you're okay. And I can't answer that question in that way. It's like I'm trying to get across to people, yet that situation is the way that it is, and I know it looks the way it does, and I know that there's turmoil, and I know that there's upheaval, but simultaneously, it's the best year I've had in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? And what you were saying then may provoke that thought. You know, about, it's not about we're doing well, we're progressing, we're going more towards the light, and things are great, and all that. It's if you could, it's like progression. Really, the only measure of it is how real is your experience becoming, and then obviously with how real things are includes all of those, I suppose, those negative aspects.
Yeah, there's a great phrase. Yesterday's transformation is today's ego trip. You know, like, if I had a good day yesterday and I wake up riding on that, then if I try and keep that going, I'm no longer in touch with myself. Like I'm in touch with an idea of where I want to be. So for me, like the situation can remain the same day to day, and my perception of it can change radically moment to moment. You know, 1 minute I'm really pissed off with it. The next minute I'm a victim to it. The next minute I'm accepting of it. Then I'm engaging with it and finding ways of acting with it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And one of the reasons I like working with this idea of the cycle is the cycle reminds us, you know, we're always moving, we're always changing, we're always moving through space and time. You know, the earth is spiraling through space and time. We're moving through space and time.
Yeah.
And my state is in a constant state of flux. And there are things I can do to work with that. You know, so I'm no longer completely a victim to whatever's moving through me, you know, and practices like meditation help with this, as you know, like just getting that sense of, I don't have to identify with how I'm feeling. I don't, you know, if somebody says, how are you? And I say, I'm really pissed off, you know, rah, 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 rah. And I get more and more convinced of how pissed off I am, and there's more and more evidence, and
start indulging it.
Yeah, exactly. And then before I know it, I really am, and then, you know, I'm really kind of invested in that.
Yeah.
And then I enroll other people in it, and, you know, they say, how are you? And then they go away going, oh God, Rose, she's really pissed. She's having a really difficult time. You know, I can get some space, you know, and see right now, this is how I'm feeling, but it's not the truth of the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why this sense of the cycle really works for me, because there are points in the cycle where absolutely I tap into what feels like an elevated state of consciousness, say, you know, where I really do lose my sense of self. You know, I'm not kind of concerned with and I guess one way of talking about it is like, if for me a lot of what life has been about has been the fragmentation of who I am, you know, a sort of learning as a child, this isn't okay, I'm going to hide this, obviously people aren't going to like this, you know, all of this sort of separating myself, hiding parts of myself, trying to present parts of myself that I think will be appreciated, approved of, etc. And, you know, then addiction was just more fragmentation, more separation, more dislocation, if you like, of different parts of me. And then recovery is like the reconnecting of parts. It's like, oh yeah, I am that person. I am that greedy person. I am that judgmental bitch. I am that annoying twit. I am that, you know, all the, and I am a thoughtful, quiet person, and I am a, you know, inquisitive, questioning, curious person. And so all these different aspects to me. And then at the point where those come together, there's a sense of, and really it's got nothing to do with me. It's not me. It's just life moving through me. The only thing that's me is the parts of me that I hold on to try and form an identity. But I can't live that day to day. I mean, I'm not questioning that there are people who do. I think there are people in, seemingly from what they say, who are in consistent elevated states. But I don't know what Eckhart Tolle's like day to day. You know, I don't know who any teacher who I regard highly. I've never lived with them. I don't know. So, you know, I know some people can listen to what I say, and, you know, some people have said to me, oh, you're so calm, or you're so this, or you're so that. It's like, well, I have moments of it.
Yeah.
But I have moments that are intensely the complete opposite of that.
Yeah. Two perspectives meeting each other.
Yeah.
Is where the truth is in that, you know, is difficult, because you've got this perspective and this perspective that's perceiving this one in a certain way and that one that way, and they're both going away with a different, you know, no one really knows the experience of the other person, as you say.
Yeah.
So it's like we kind of we agree, we kind of collectively agree on some aspect of what we think the truth is, even though it's quite watered down. I just really love the reality, and I think that's got a lot, putting it together as I speak to you and get to know you more. You know, I think it's grounded by your experience, shall we say, as in history, you know, from way back when to now. So I'd like to touch on that if I could, you know, kind of rewinding the clock a little bit. The journey, you know, to here, and some of the standout experiences or feature of the history which you feel have contributed to. I mean, it all contributes, but you know, some of, as I say, some of the standout features which have got you to your understanding of where you are today, and your understanding of this thing we've been talking about for this morning. Where would you start with that? Those the features of the history.
I don't know, really. I mean, I guess there's always the question of why am I the way that I am? Do you know what I mean? Like, any of us could ask ourselves that question, and I don't know if there's a definitive answer, like nature, nurture. But
the prism of, you know, your holisticism and your I mean, your life.
The choices I've made. Yeah.
What's put you in that in the place to be able to go, okay, I might have something to offer here.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Like you've recovered and transformed from difficulty, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of the things, and I've heard other people talk about this who are in recovery from addictions of any kind, is one of the benefits of really bottoming out, like really shattering everything, is that you've got nothing to lose. You know, that point of, I don't know anybody who has come into recovery from anything, whether it be a substance or a behavior or any condition, without reaching a point of despair. Like, you know, that point of just thinking, I can't take it anymore, you know. And for me and for many people, that wasn't one point in time, you know. It was like a sort of build up of, you know, just something's got to change, and not understanding why I couldn't, you know, trying to change, doing self-development courses. You know, I had this real interest in spirituality, studied different religions, you know, took lots of different mind-altering drugs, you know, explored a lot and was left with the problem of myself over and over and over again that just seemed to be escalating, and my addictive behaviors were escalating, and the shame was escalating, and So putting down drink and drugs for me was radical and so uncomfortable. To me, like that was what had got me through the experience of being myself. So to be left with myself, this raw, quivering wreck, and not know what the hell I was going to do. And, I did it with support. I tried to do it on my own and couldn't. So, I did a 12-step fellowship and still do. But that experience opened my mind because I had to surrender. I had to accept. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't get it. I've never understood life. I've tried to live a life that I thought was worth living, and it's brought me here. So that real sort of soul shattering fall to your knees, I don't know, I think is a place of amazing potential. And if I hadn't have gone that low, my ego was far too well cultivated to have accepted that I didn't know. It's like I might have talked about it, but I wouldn't have actually lived it. I wouldn't have allowed myself to step into the unknown so naked and just said, I don't get it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that was a really pivotal point. And then, just as on the hike, things come in, things crossed my path. The book that I needed to read jumped out of the shelf, as I walked past it, kind of thing. Just extraordinary moments of synchronicity and wonderfully healing conversations and learning from other people's experiences. And then a few years after that, I decided to step into the space of the unknown around work. So this was a year after the hike. So I'd come back and we decided we were going to move out of London. So I'd set up and run an organisation for 8 years. So I decided to leave. And that was massive. That was like my baby, the child that I don't have kind of thing.
What was it?
It was inspired by the work of Paulo Freire. I don't know if you know him. He's a Brazilian educator who believed that education was a collective experience, process, rather than an expert at the front of the class telling you
sounds good
to know. And he basically said, unless information is relevant to you in your life, it's meaningless. And when I heard that, I thought, yes, that's what I said the whole way through school, Yes. And I trained as a teacher out of uni as well, and still walked away from that thinking, what the fuck is education about? And he radically transformed my idea of what's possible. So it was an organisation that used video with groups who didn't have a voice at a decision-making level. So we devised this creative process where we taught them how to use the equipment, and they developed their own videos of what they wanted to say and how they wanted to communicate them. And yeah, it was great. We worked all around the world, and it was amazing.
That go in the end.
Yeah.
Step into the unknown.
I let that go, because what I saw was, I started it after I worked in human rights education, and then I got divorced. I was married before and I got divorced, and at after that divorce, which I instigated in response to feeling a failure from that, I set up this organisation. So there was a sort of drive. There was a personal need that I was fulfilling, which was to do with me. So I may have been working, at community level, doing good work. But what was under it was my own need to succeed and my own need to feel like I was doing good in the world. So when I saw that, it became very uncomfortable doing that work. I just felt like the sort of integrity of it was questionable. So I left with this question: what will come to me if I don't drive something into existence? So I left without a plan, and I just said, okay, life, show me what's for me. And I got a cancer diagnosis. Which I'm laughing. I mean, obviously, actually, I did laugh when I got the news. I sort of laughed hysterically. I think that's a reaction to shock, isn't it?
And I shouldn't laugh either, but I think it's a laugh of it's like a camaraderie. It's like an understanding of why you might be laughing about it as well.
Well, also because of those expectations, you say to life, bring me what's for me, as if, wonderful, now I will truly know, what's for me. And I guess I imagined what would come would be, sort of great opportunities.
Yeah.
And
it's the comedy and tragedy element.
Yeah.
Relationship there.
Yeah. And it taught me everything I really was longing to know and didn't know how to learn.
So I mean, most people, okay, they might have the depths of despair due to drugs and or alcohol usage and where that's taking you to. Or they might have, a diagnosis of a really serious illness. You've had both going on there, and that's just incredible
I mean, people have a lot bigger challenges than I've faced in my life, but I think I don't know why. All I can say is, sorry.
This walking into the unknown thing seems to be the feature that's coming out from the history and the features of what's been important to you. So that seems to be.
Well, I really believe
in that.
I really believe in that, and that's not to say that I believe that I need to be in the space of the unknown all the time, although you could argue that I am, and it's only delusion that has me think otherwise.
Yeah.
But where else am I going to learn? Where else am I going to understand anything new? And for me, I've held on to what I've known so tightly, like in the past, that I needed really severe experiences to let go, to surrender. And I don't know why that is, but and I don't mean to talk about cancer in a flippant way, because
no, of course,
I know there's a lot of people who haven't been lucky enough to come through their diagnosis, and people who are listening may have loved ones who've had that experience or may have had that experience themselves, and be living with it now. So I don't mean to be flippant, but it did, and it was just an extraordinary teacher. It broke me again. There was nothing I could reach for. I think, like if the question of identity is interesting, like, I would never have chosen to grow up and identify myself as an addict or an alcoholic. that wasn't an identity that I was aspiring to as a youth, although, maybe rebel or something that was a bit kind of more, had a bit more cool credibility might have appealed. But, those labels just sound pretty sad and desperate. And similarly, having cancer isn't something that I'd have chosen. But just like what you were saying about challenging years and what they bring, the richness of what I experienced in those times was just phenomenal. It was life-changing in a way that I'm forever grateful for. And it's not like going through cancer was just hell. It was a beautiful healing, in terms of facing death and seeing my life and seeing my relationships and just letting go, just around family especially, just seeing I love them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter what's happened. I am letting go of the stories of my childhood, the stories of the past, my judgment, Do
you think there's a relationship there between those stories that we have around us and family, us and experiences with other people, from which we draw trauma, and sickness and healing? Do you know what I mean? Is there a relationship there, do you think? Because you've alluded to it there by saying,
I know
letting go of that
sounds,
from what you're saying, to have been instrumental in your healing.
Yeah. I can't say I know. It's a mystery to me. Like, a lot of life is a mystery to me. And
in your case, then, do you think?
Sorry?
In your case, then, do you think that was?
I can't say why I got ill. I don't know. All I can say is the benefits of what came from that experience and being willing to engage with it at I also completely changed the way I ate. I changed the way, do you know what I mean? Like, it really...
But was that part of the healing, though, I suppose? Maybe I didn't ask it right. Was part of the healing the shedding of those stories?
Definitely. And and identities and attachment. I was still really attached to showing up in the world and being somebody. I was, not being able to work and not having... we'd moved up here, so this was the first year of living in Liverpool, and so I didn't know anyone, and if I met people, it was really uncomfortable because I just didn't have any answers for the normal sorts of questions people ask when they first meet you, without feeling like, God, who am I? I haven't got anything to say for myself other than, I'm just going through this at the moment. So it just made me see how attached I was to how I present myself, what my identity is, and I had no idea. Again, I was just brought to my knees, and all I could do was, say I don't, not to people when I was introducing myself, I don't know. Although I probably did to some people. I don't know what's going on right now.
I'm David, who are you? I don't know. No, but you mentioned as well the other aspects of your healing. You mentioned there was nutritional elements and maybe other things as well.
Yeah, it I guess it kind of broke open. Actually, what it was, it gave me permission to live the life I really wanted to live. That's what it did. Like, coming face to face with death, it was like, oh, right, okay, if I don't do it now, if I don't live the life I really want to live now, maybe never. and whose life will I have lived. I just saw how I was still attempting to live by other people's ideas of what life was about, and in giving myself permission to do that, suddenly, it was, I've always wanted to paint. I've always wanted to do much more yoga than what I'm doing now. I've always wanted to, can't think what else, but yeah, it feel areas of me that I hadn't allowed to fill out. Suddenly, just there was permission for that.
So it's like a fulfillment of the self in a way.
Yeah, that's a good description. Yeah.
There's something which I found interesting about the story kind of that you've described from way back when to here, and everything that's happened in between. This isn't the story of someone who had no disregard for what life was about, what the world was about somebody who didn't have a disregard for the planet and was living recklessly and didn't want to help. And, it wasn't that, was it? Because it was kind of the opposite in one sense, from what I know of you so far. You did want to know the answers. You did have belief and faith in some really good ideas that you thought could change things and help people and change the world and all that stuff. So that's what I find quite interesting about your story. It's like it wasn't the path of destruction and flippance and I don't care, which brought you to where you. It was there was a different way of what people would usually understand. What might take people into despair. It was on the face of it, because this is what must have been difficult. Yeah. On the face of it, you thought you were going down the right path, didn't you? You thought you were doing all the right things to help others and help yourself. Would that be right in surmising?
Well, I think there was a massive hypocrisy about me, in that I stood for something and I lived something else.
Right.
So this is an idea about what might have been going on, because I don't think I could ever really know unless I could go back there and see it with the eyes I've got today. But I think there was things that happened in my life early on that I didn't know what to do with, and those things continued and then escalated. And I know Gabor Mate talks about the role of trauma in addiction, and that makes sense to me. Like, it's all the things that I don't know what to do with and I don't have anyone to talk to about remain in me, churning around, and then I'm medicating myself to try and keep living a life that looks relatively okay, or feel relatively okay about myself. But it was like I had some very clear boundaries. Like, I never went out drinking with my workmates. I did that once and I knew, right, I'm never doing that ever again, because my identity at work was different to my identity when I was drinking and taking drugs, and the two didn't meet. So when I talked about that idea of the sort of fragmented parts of the self, that's who I could step into this identity, I could step into this identity, I could step into this identity. So it's like hollow shell inside, and then all these different masks, very adept at kind of...
Are you doing some good work though, weren't you? Like stuff about human rights and...
Yeah, well, it's interesting.
Education.
It depends at what level you want to look at that. Maybe. But maybe human rights is to capitalism what Christianity was to colonialism. A moral agenda which is basically used to manipulate the less powerful by the powerful. Was the work I was doing good, or I don't know, because the people who I was working with, they got results. I just don't know. I don't know. I just think, I wasn't from those communities. How much did I really understand about what they needed, what their experience was? How did the experience sit with them afterwards?
The honesty again is what's really illuminating here. Your own honesty about yourself and intentions and motivation during that time, and I totally get that, and it's really refreshing, for you to be able to kind of put me or anyone straight on, like, okay, might have been on the surface doing this and this, but really, there's this and this going on, and my own thing. And I get it, and I totally take that on board, and I'm sure everyone else would listening. But still behind that, I think, just from the collection of stuff you've presented and what you say, I think there still is something genuine that's been there all along, in terms of the way you're oriented. Something what you're oriented towards. You might have been floundering or doing it wrong or doing it for the wrong reason or whatever it was, but I think there's still something in you that is a genuine walk towards the light, if you know what I mean.
If there is, it's not me. It's not. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's nothing I've done. It's just by chance. I got lucky. If that's the case, if it's there. I sort of think we all have that, but the trauma that I went through didn't completely obliterate it. Where for some people, the trauma they go through is so extreme. I mean, some stories I hear, people are incredible. I mean, the resilience people have, and what people can come back from. It's just amazing.
Is that, you mentioned I suppose you've answered the question. I was going to say was, what role do you have for grace, in things that come to pass? And sounds like, you put that quite highly in.
Yeah, last year I was sort of working with this idea. It came to me that we're like unconscious programming, conscious practices, and moments of grace. And I felt like that pretty much summed up my experience of being a human. The unconscious programming that's just driving on and on and on and on and on and on. And then the conscious practices, which when I'm doing them, but also over time, do make me more aware of the unconscious drone of thoughts and behaviours and reactions. And then these moments of grace, for which I have no explanation other than, they're something else is going on here. It's a mystery. I don't have a definitive belief or understanding of the divine. I just have personal experiences that I put down to being beyond what my human brain can put into words.
I understand totally. Okay, so bringing all that back then, to now, and we've had the recent experiences of the last year, which challenging. It sounds challenging, to say the least, and collectively the experiences of maybe the last few decades for yourself, and so here you are now. What's that? Where are you now with that then? What's the forward steps into, and in relation to how do other people benefit from that? What are you doing with other people at the minute? What are people who are looking and listening, wondering how they might check in with you and see if you can help them in any way? What's that looking like at the minute?
Well, as I said before, I'm doing this course called Return to Source, which is about like recognizing in your own life and in who you are the rhythms of the world and the rhythms of the earth, and what those two experiences are like, how you experience them.
I like that distinction, by the way. I like that distinction. I think it's really important to make for people between the world and the earth, you know.
Yeah, it's been a helpful one for me, yeah.
Yeah. And then, it ties into something, been reading a book recently about the imaginal realm and plant intelligence by, I'll get his name. His name escapes me. I say this all the time, but I forgot it for now. But I'll put it in the link in the comments and I'll send it to you. And it's coming back into the earth and the intelligence of all organic life and, you know, stuff like that. And he talks about the Save the Earth thing, the movement to save the earth, and even some of the climate change stuff, which, you know, when you unpick that and you put it in the context which you have with the world and the earth, it's like the earth doesn't need saving. You know, it's not, and it's not what we're trying to save. Sometimes when we think we're doing a good thing, what we're trying to save is ourselves, the human construct, and everything that comes from that. So yeah, you know, save the world sometimes can have a bit of a different meaning. They save the earth. It's like, what is it about the earth that needs to be saved? It's like, it's not going to blow up if we, you know, continue not to put our rubbish in the wrong bin or something, you know. Do you know what I mean? But I just thought that was an interesting little juncture from, and definitely a good point that you've made about world and earth. But yeah, continue with how that fits into your work.
So that's a program I do with a small group. So we have an evening session. We meet on Zoom and explore a theme each week, and then the next morning we do a yoga practice together to embody those themes, like to work through those themes with movement and breath and sometimes chanting and meditation.
Is this like a retreat style kind of thing?
No, it's just a 5-week course. So I like doing courses and workshops. I mean, I do one-to-one coaching with people, which I love.
Yeah.
But in terms of yoga, I do a drop-in recovery class, but I don't do drop-in classes as much. I tend to do kind of 4 weeks blocks where we can really get into something, you know, work with a theme. So at the moment I'm doing working with the moon. So we meet on new moon and full moon, because I think, again, the moon is an amazing teacher, like how it teaches us about change and moving with change. And there's so much richness in, I mean, that's what I find with nature. When we look at nature as a teacher, there's so much simple wisdom there to learn from.
So it's about the cycles for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is at the moment. It is, yeah. And then the other work that I do is around the energy centers in the body, the chakras. So what I find really helpful with that is the, you know, what we've been talking about, the seeing the whole of us. So, you know, from the heart up, these higher chakras are our infinite experience of our infinite selves. But down here is our experience of our finite selves, being in these bodies and being messy and unconscious and human. And as humans, we are both of those, as well as this heart center. And for me, I find it really helpful, and it seems other people do too, to use that model as a way of getting in touch with the reality of our lives, you know, the full spectrum of who we are and how we experience life. not missing anything out. So not just sort of, I feel like there's been this maybe patriarchal, I don't know, but sort of it's happened over the last few thousand years where there's this idea of we must transcend the physical, we must transcend the earth, we must all be on this journey to, the highest consciousness, oneness, the purity of the light and the love. And my experience is I have moments of that, but there's that book, isn't there, Enlightenment, and then the laundry, and then life goes on. And I find it really, I don't want to be judging this. I'm in this incredible body. I'm living on this amazing earth. While I'm here, I want to take care of this. Obviously, it's taken me a long time to learn that. And I want to do my bit to take care of the earth, whatever that means, But
there's so many things from what you said that we could jump off from, and I feel like we could get like another load of material on, another load of conversations, about, as you say, the rise of, you mentioned patriarchy, and it's like the rise of more of like the masculine energy, and that whole shift in consciousness again, and how culture has developed on the back of that, and the reasons for that, and maybe where we need to come back to for solution and stuff. And yeah, I feel there's so many jumping off points from what you're saying, so many points of interest, that, maybe we should do another catch up sometime, in the future. But I've really enjoyed listening to you.
It's been great talking to you, David. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been fantastic, really eye-opening for me. I mean that genuinely. Some of the insights I feel lucky to have just engaged with, and some of the things I've heard just putting in a certain way, which have definitely given me a few more pieces to any puzzle I might be working on at the moment.
Yeah.
Really nice to hear the different perspectives, and yeah, hopefully we can do this again another time.
Yeah, well, thanks. I've really enjoyed talking to you as always. Yeah,
brilliant. And as I say, again, for those listening or watching, I will leave some links to Rose's work, ways that you may be able to contact her in ways that she prefers for any life coaching or anything of that nature, and maybe one or two links for other things that we've talked about in this conversation. But for now, it's Rose Long, everybody. Really, thank you for coming and joining me this morning and having this lovely chat.
Thanks.
And
thanks to everyone who's listened.
Thanks again, Rose.
Good to see you, David.
Have a lovely day.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.